Greetings to you, music lovers, thrill seekers, conversationalists all across the fruited plain. The sound of that voice, it's comforting. It lets you know you're at home. It tells you you are in America. It tells you everything's okay. And it is. It's Friday, so let's go.
And now, from sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
And we couldn't be happier to be with you today. Open Line Friday, this is, has the potential to be one of the fun days of the week because there are so few restrictions placed on callers. Monday through Thursday, I am Rahm Emanuel and you are Chick-fil-A. But on Friday... on Friday, we throw all that out, and you have total freedom. Whatever you want to talk about, feel free. It's an opportunity to ask questions, preguntas, make comments. It can also be a bomb because of that. I mean, you're turning the program over to rank amateurs, you never know. Lovable rank amateurs, but still not broadcast specialists. So it's always a roll of dice. It's fun. Here's phone number, 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. The Commerce Department has issued their initial estimate for the third quarter GDP grew at 1.5%. This is a disaster for this country. It is literally a disaster. And John Podhoretz at Commentary Magazine has a good little post here that puts some of this in perspective. He says that the economic growth rate of 1.5% is quite simply catastrophic for President Kardashian. The economy is weakening, is what this means. The economy is weakening as the election approaches. Now, Podhoretz says here, no one's ever won re-election in such circumstance. Nobody. No one. Forget the unemployment statistic, which is no incumbent has ever been re-elected with the unemployment rate higher than 7.9%. Throw that out. No one has ever won re-election with the economy contracting, which it's doing. Now, he points out that things are not as bad for Obama as they were for Jimmy Carter. In the second quarter of 1980, the economy actually contracted by 0.7%. However, get this surprised me. In 1930s, I should tell you, Rasmussen's out today with a poll that has Romney up 5. Romney is up over Obama by 5 points, and that is identical to the lead Obama had at this very same time in 2008. 5-point lead. Now, 1936, FDR won a landslide despite the Great Depression. Now, a lot of people think the Great Depression was the economy contracting and people jumping out windows on Wall Street. But Amity Shlaes, who is an FDR depression expert, she's written a couple books about it, she posted an interesting stat on Twitter yesterday. I thought Twitter was down yesterday. Twitter must have come back up. Anyway, do you know what the annual GDP, the economic growth rate was 1933 to 1936? This will shock you. It stunned me. It averaged 9%. Economic growth during the Great Depression, 1933 to 1936, averaged 9%. Snurdly saying, how come they call it a depression? That's to put this in context. That's the interesting thing here that's been discovered by Amity Shlaes and John Podhoretz. Now, Podhoretz says that the most interesting analogy is to 1992, a year in which the economy was actually staging a recovery from a recession in 1991. And you remember 1992, Clinton, Carville, Stephanopoulos running around, worst economy in the last 50 years. We were taking phone calls from people on this. It can't get any worse, Rush. It can't get any worse. And it drove me crazy. But perceptions in politics are reality, and that's what people believed. So listen to this. 1992, a year in which the economy actually was staging a recovery from a recession in 1991. The annual growth rate in 1992, when the economy was so bad and everybody thought it was, and we had to throw Bush out, was 3.4%. Remember, it came in December. It came in after the election. The fourth quarter was through the roof after the election, and the annualized GDP rate for 1992 was 3.4%. The incumbent, George H.W. Bush, got 38% of the vote that year. Ross Perot got his share, and then Clinton won with 43%. Now, none of this is a guarantee of anything in the future. But as Podhoretz points out here, it all gets to the central problem for President Kardashian. What case can he make for a second term with undecided voters? And then we just got started yesterday, folks, in dumping this suburban strategery on him. Stanley Kurtz has figured it out. This is the one thing Obama didn't want anybody to do. I am convinced that, in fact, I think that one of the reasons they've been so open, because remember November 2011 when Thomas B. Edsall had that piece where they just admitted that they were going to ignore white working class folks. So why admit that? If you're going to do it, do it. But why write a piece in the New York Times that spells out, white working class voters, we're not interested in them. We're not going to campaign for them. And then they're running ads now trying to suppress the votes from that group of people. I think one of the reasons why they might have gone public with that, because the real target here is suburban voters. They're not. I don't think Obama wants this out. I don't think that the campaign of the regime is going to be happy with people identifying that what he's really trying to do is get back at suburbanites who have fled the cities. That those people are his real enemies. That those people are his real targets. Once that case starts being made, he can't run on his record. Everybody knows it. All he can do is try to scare people about Romney, that Romney would make it worse. So all of the historical signs point to no chance, if historical trends mean anything. Now, they don't. That's the thing. This kind of stuff is recorded so that someday it can be, like a record in sports, be broken. Pat Buchanan. I'm not going to get to this right now, but hopefully in this hour, Pat Buchanan has a column at Human Events. In the long run, is the Republican Party dead? Even if they win this election, is the Republican Party dead? He makes a compelling case, I have to admit. Snurdly in there frowning. It's a compelling... He's asking the question. He's not proclaiming it. He's asking the question. And he presents the data. So I'll give you a hint. Republican Party blew it when they did not do anything for 40 years to stop illegal immigration. They just gave California to the Democrat Party, and California's lost. And it's a microcosm for what's happening. It's not just immigration, it's cultural rot and everything else. But when you hear it's a pretty compelling case. Folks, do you remember... You remember that the banks wouldn't lend to blacks and Hispanics because they were racist? And then do you remember how Jimmy Carter and then Clinton, and then after that, Clinton came along and they passed something called a Community Reinvestment Act? And you remember what that did? The federal government forced banks to lend money to people who had no prayer of ever paying it back. Janet El Reno, the Attorney General for Clinton, even threatened the big banks all over the country with investigations if they didn't do this. The Reverend Jackson was running around complaining about redlining, that people of color were not being given loans because of racist policies of the banks. And so the American dream was defined as everybody should have a house. And the Democrats came along. It's not fair. Some people have houses, other people don't. How can we fix it? Well, we got to put the people who don't have houses in houses. Well, how do we do that if they can't afford it? It's simple. We make the banks loan them money at low interest rates, and then the dirty little secret is they can't pay it back. So it's up to the banks. The banks are going to eat it. That was the philosophy. The banks owed this because the banks have been screwing people for so long. Remember all this? You remember then what Wall Street, after doing this, under threat of investigation, and a threat of the use of force, under the intimidation of federal government, the banks then made these loans, and then what they did, they pooled them together. Worthless pieces of paper, worthless mortgage. After worthless mortgage, the banks pooled these things together in consort with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they went out and they gave these new pool mortgages a name, derivatives and so forth, and then they sold them to unsuspecting people. And they said, look at this income stream we've got for you. We have put together here 25,000 mortgages. Look at the income stream you've got. AAA rating on these loans. AAA rating on these mortgages. Now, the banks had no, they're stuck with worthless paper that the government made them incur, made them make these loans. So the bank said, okay, how can we get the money back? We got to get rid of this. They package all this stuff together. They sell it to unsuspecting investors who think they're buying a phenomenal income stream. And all of this is backed up by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And remember, they kept selling these things as one group of buyers discovered they had been taken. They quietly repackaged what was worthless and sold it again. And this kept happening until finally there were no suckers left to buy this stuff. And what happened was people were unable to pay these mortgages. The banks all over this country were left holding the bag. All 5 of the Wall Street investment houses either went under or had to be bailed out by the federal government. Lehman Brothers went south. Get the movie margin call. It's fabulous. And then, after it was all over, after that happened, guess what we were told? We were told that the banks, this is the subprime mortgage crisis, so we were told that the banks had engaged in predatory lending, that they had forced these unsuspecting, unwitting, unqualified, poor people of color to take these loans. I mean, these people were walking on the street. They're past the front door of the bank, and some evil banker went out there and grabbed them and pulled them in and intimidated them. You are going to buy that house, and you're going to do it with this mortgage. They were forced to. This was the story. You remember how all of this led to the financial crisis. It's still the foundation of what's plaguing this country to this day, because all of this cost the government $1 trillion. It destroyed the housing market because it put a bunch of people into it who had no ability to be there. So equity went south. Home prices went south, and they're still going south, and home values are still plummeting, and home sales are... This subprime mortgage thing, which was a government creation, brought to us by liberals, under the guise of compassion. It's unfair that some people should have homes and others shouldn't. All of this cost at least $1 trillion, put the government in a gigantic hole that we are still in. We still have not dug ourselves out of it. You've heard me tell this story how many times? Then we had the investors jumping in. Interest-only loans, no documentation loans. We had people calling here telling us that they went to seminars put on by the government how to get people with no credit rating a AAA credit rating, how to do all this. Well, you might be saying, well, yeah, Rush, we know all this. What's the point? Well, according to William Tucker, the American Spectator, the federal government is about to start the whole process again. Believe it or not, the federal government is now starting another initiative to force banks to loan money to low credit rated blacks and Hispanics. Not just anybody, but specifically blacks and Hispanics. The government is threatening and already collecting huge punitive fines if they don't do it. And moreover, this time they're going even further. They're going to take over the credit rating agencies and force them to change their standards to accommodate blacks and Hispanics so that nobody will have any idea who is a bad credit risk and who isn't. In other words, the government is about to impose its will on the entire home lending market again and force another round of bad loans so that the banks are going to be looted once again so that even the federal government may not be able to bail them out this time. That sounds impossible. I am not kidding. No, it's not a joke. It's being done on purpose.